of them just like co-create and just like expand and explode their project. And so I'm so excited that you're here. And thank you for coming to talk to the community.
Thank you. All right. So I guess I'm going to share the screen and we can go from there. All right. Do you want to just sort of introduce?
Yeah. Just want to say hey to everybody. Hello, everybody. My name is Ali Knight. I am a traditional ecological practitioner, the master TEK practitioner for the Mechoopda Indian tribe here. Our territory, tribal territory of Mechoopda, is quite vast. It's really taking in a lot of villages and small communities that do not have federal recognition or no longer in those areas, but they're in our tribal territory now for protection. So that's all the way from Magalia, all the way down to Durham, to the Sacramento River. You're going to see a big portion of that for Mechoopda territory. So that's where I'm indigenous from, and so there's some other tribes that I'm been working with for some programs here for the last 20 years, and like you've heard of the introduction, lately it's really been kicking off, but I have been doing this for quite a while and work mostly with children doing outdoor education in the early 2000s, and this is where it's led me.
And I'm Mel Figueroa. I am not indigenous to this continent, but I work with Ali. I am trained as an ecologist. I've studied indigenous knowledge systems in the Amazon, as well as here in the Caribbean as well. And so I'm actually I came here when I met you, Pam. I was a food scholar, and I just published some chapters and some articles on food sovereignty. And so, and then everything changed in my life. And so now I'm here, but everything that I have been learning has led me to this point. So I'm just really lucky, and it's so awesome to be doing the fruits of my work here. So, yeah. All right. So we're going to talk today about TEK, the work that we're doing, and how that contributes to place-based food security. So first, many of you are familiar with this slide, but just to start off, what is TEK?
Traditional ecological knowledge. Thank you for asking. It's a system of ecological science and technology through indigenous folks that's place-based, and it has been done for 20,000 years. So in a long story short, especially if you're sitting in California right at this moment, no matter where you are also in someone's tribal territory. They're never going to be like, I'm in no one's territory, unless there's a tribe called no one's. So go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things that helps shift our mindset to really understand what TEK is to kind of get rid of the word wild. Okay. A lot of the idea of wilderness was actually an invention of the 19th century, and it assumed, right, that the indigenous peoples that were here, that were kicked out of their lands in order to create wilderness areas, were kind of what they call hunter-gatherers. Joke about hunter-gatherer, like, oh, I think I'm going to go search far and wide for my food and stuff like that. But that's actually not. In actual historical reality, indigenous inhabited forest lands extensively, and because of that, TEK can also be place-based knowledge. They have thousands of years of knowledge and experience of the active human management required in native. We'll do the climate one.
Yeah, so that all goes into climate adaptation. So we've all heard from either, and unfortunately, climate from a political discussion. Someone has their microphone on. The climate has changed over the years. The changing of this climate is due to a lot of factors. Now, if you're paying attention, if there's a big, huge volcano explosion on one side of the world, it will affect the globe over time, right? And so it'll create something called climate change, where because of this event, a lot of things change, and so much so that things have changed here. You'll lose species of plants, like a large, basically die-off happens. It's basically also called a reset button. And this has happened over 4.6 billion years. So 4.6 billion years ago, the planet is born. And we can conceive of that time. But for all this time, the plant has developed 200,000 years. Humans have been adapting to the climate change to survive as a species here. So that's what we're talking about in a really holistic, larger picture.
So, oops. The science of TEK is based in, and we were just talking about this with Maria before, that it's a community-based natural resource management model. So in terms of like, yeah, if all of the work that it takes to make an acorn flower, if you're just doing it by yourself, it's going to be very, very hard. But the paradigm really is this community, everybody, right? Everybody needs to know the basic dynamics of the ecosystem. Everybody needs to know basic ways of managing the ecosystems. And when we think about food webs nowadays, a lot of times people would just think food webs about who eats who, right? But in TEK, the web of relations that make a place, the web of plants, animals, rocks, watersheds, trees, etc., is all works together to create those things. We also have cultural keystone species. So this is a term to know, and it's also a way of orienting yourself. So the idea of a keystone species, like in ecology, is that there's one species or one or few species that the whole ecosystem kind of like revolves around, right? And that's the way they talk about it in ecology. But when you add in the human component, the tendency is that those keystone species, those plants and animals that have a critical role in maintaining the ecosystems, are also culturally significant to a people in their food, medicine, traditions, etc. You want to say anything else about that?
Well, and I think that is part of, I'm not going to point out the elephant. We have to understand the colonial effect when people came and colonized California. It hasn't been that long. It's 180 years tops. That's the tops. That this place has had a complete reversal of thought about the ecosystem, the food we eat, and how we take care of each other and the roles that we play. They were completely changed from an indigenous culture and base to a European or almost like a hybrid type species that's there only to consume resources based on the hierarchy of the human being the only apex alive.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing about TEK is that you can't just read about it in a book. It's not the way that you take, there's a formula and then you just apply it to a different place. Because it is place-based and because it's community-based, you have to walk the land and to work the land to really get how it works, right? And so you have to practice it in order for it to actually for people to appreciate it. Right, and so that's what we're doing at Verbena Fields. Okay.
So we're going to talk about the food web, the circle of life, right? And we all heard about food webs. We've, it's something that you often teach children in outdoor education so that they can know what the producers are, and this is a predator, and this is, there's all these relationships going on outdoors. And a lot of times what we we don't realize what we teach children is that these relationships are.
Can somebody mute her microphone, please? Thank you.
When some of these, what happens is we're really not teaching children or even our future children and have a chance to teach them how we are part of this entire ecosystem that we live around us. In fact, we do our best to separate ourselves from the actual ecosystem we live in and remove ourselves as much as possible and replace it with some other diets and foods that have no, very little to do with the ecosystem we're in. We will think that it's okay for the deer and the lion and the squirrels to play a role in the ecosystem, but we're so far above that, it's not in our perimeter. So this is where we have to get into the pre-colonial food web and saying what's in this place, but what's the place-based science here? And what's the science of getting calories? What's the science of getting sustenance and sustainable food over a period of time? Well, this is something to study through looking at tribal groups and their trading routes.
So if you look at sort of the picture of pre-colonial North America, you'll see that California is actually the most diverse and the most densely populated side of the continent. And there's a reason for that. What's the reason, Allie?
Geography. Yeah, the geography. The geography gives a lot of soil, a lot of burning. So you have just this overall land tending practices over, you know, what we're gonna say humans have been on this planet for 200,000 years, and we're claiming that we were made here, that we were part of this ecosystem far away before the science of what Western science believes. They're making up stories about this Asian thing, you know, bridge and channels that they totally don't hold up. But what we're saying is that we understand the geography so well and intimately that we don't really have to go far. We can develop good soil, good food practices, and live abundantly right up next to each other. Kind of like, you know, how democracy, was intended.
Yes, food democracy.
Yeah, food democracy.
And not only that, a lot of these groups were self-sufficient within 30-mile radius, something like that. But there was also extensive trade routes throughout the continent. And so part of the food shed is also the relations with other peoples in other places, and how and actually extensive networks of trade also helped food security on this continent before European contact. Now, if you zoom in on our little area here, you'll see that, look, there's a ton of tribes, right in that Sacramento River watershed and on the coast. And everybody traded with each other. And it was also, so if you're looking at your food webs, if you're just looking, even if you're just looking at human food webs, you see the sort of intricacy of these relations that helped make food security and abundance real for.
Yeah, and a lot of this was based on migratory patterns. This is what also would be called TEK, traditional ecological knowledge, is migratory patterns. Now, TEK, traditional, means that, oh, it doesn't update. Well, of course, the way the birds go each year is, it's the science of the new, of the now. Traditionally, what the bird did is not going to be so important, or it'll be part of what's important, but it's also important what is it doing now. So that's where the word traditional can get skewed out of TEK. But there's just a lot of knowledge that belongs there. So knowing your migratory of elk, your migratory of birds, your migratory of certain salmon, all of those patterns are part of this trading route as well, and that is that's that dance.
Mm-hmm.
So coastal keystone food species. This is in my Mechoopda territory, and or maybe I should say our Mechoopda territory. You don't ever have to call it Chico or Butte County if you don't want to. You can call it Mechoopda territory. Feeling sassy. But the things that we were using as keystone food species for trading, they are very unique to this area, because if you have gone to different areas and different altitudes, the plants change, and that behavior of how they adapt to that altitude or adapt to that geography location changes. So you might find tons of valley oaks here, but as soon as you're leaving the elevations, you're going to go up to blue oak. And so Loai is our valley oak acorn. And then we got Tokawi, your blue oak acorns. You got Tony, your pine nuts. There's other acorns too. We got black oak, whatnot. And these acorns do need to be dried, then crushed out, and then, leached to get the tannins out. Now, this process of tannin removal is very super, super popular in a place also known as, well, it's Nomawaki territory, Pascanta, but some people call it Horny. So anyway, that place has a lot of people taking tannins out of olives, but this is a very different idea of understanding that we can do tannin removals from acorns, and you utilize these acorns for flour And they also make very good burn medicine if you've never had used acorn paste to put on a sunburn or any type of burn you have. It's quite a miracle.
Also the nutritional content. Yeah, we want to talk about the nutritional content.
Too much. It's so
just
many.
this top row here.
I always think about maybe we could just come in with just like maybe one of those pancake things where maybe we have a little bit of like acorn flour pancakes, just like a variety, just a choice, options. But just to introduce people into using acorn and acorn flour, or even in a setting where somebody at a bakery would want to be interested. Well, we all know what Tony is, but that is your pine nuts. So that's all your pesto is made with pine nuts. So it's very good, practical food. It's a little beautiful nut full of protein in a wooden shell inside of a very, excellent packaging, very nice. Biodegradable, top of the line technology. So then we have wahi, that is your potatoes. And see how big they are? They're about the size, they're pretty large size. These potatoes you can eat raw and they don't have to be cooked, but they're very delicious, super buttery. Very buttery, I'd have to say, and very good. We also have our salmon. I put nerd down there. I use the word for the Wintoon because the Wintoon of doing the tribe and Shasta is doing their best to really promote the salmon run and let us know the migratory patterns of the salmon so that we can respect them and let them live on the land and coexist with us here. Because right now, because of farming and the way we have allowed a lot of politicians to make environmental decisions, they're really throwing the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to like just letting the salmon die and not having a place here anymore. And then we have the Sierra plum. This is the reason why I put this up here, because if people are a lot of concern, like there's plums out here, you don't see them in the parks. No, they were all removed because there's a political thing for you. Food is political. And so in order to remove the natives, they took away our access to our favorite foods so that we would perish in a very state-sanctioned genocide that, we now know and know the governor has now acknowledged was a genocide.
Recording in progress.
So bay leaf, we also have the bay laurel leaf. So you've seen the bay leaves everywhere out here, right? And then you see the bay nuts. They're not there every year. But you need to pay attention. That is a delicious nut right there. That food is good to roast and eat. You're missing out if you don't know. And it can have a very chocolate taste too. So you can end up making it, if you add sugar to it, getting a very chocolatey taste. So it's a very interesting nut. If you've never had it, show baked, go ahead and try it. And then we also have the California wild rose. The wild rose, very good, sweet, tasty. If you haven't seen the California wild rose, it grows in the Bivouac parks, but it has a very strong taste, a very strong, sweet, sour, depending on where it's at on its blooming. But it's not like your other roses or anything else you find. California wild rose, very delicious.
And it's a huge source of vitamin C.
Super packs.
It's a superfood.
Yep. Oh, and then medicine. So we're talking about foods. Now I'm gonna throw you on to some medicines. Because this is a good time to sit there. If we're gonna be on YouTube, we're gonna share things with the community. I'm just gonna drop it out right here. Here's some knowledge. So let's look at this knowledge. We have munmuni. Munmuni is mugwort that is also used. It's one of our keystone species for medicine. It's the most used medicine we have. And if you go into our medicine books or read all of the features on this, what you're gonna see is pages and pages and pages. The tippy top one that I mostly use it for and a crunch is it's really good for bruising and sprains. So it fixes that up real fast. So if you want to double time your healing on a bruise or double time your healing on a sprain, what you do, because you think about it, you're thinking about like you go to the doctor and you're like, what do you like? You're like, I want you to give me some antidote that makes me heal fast. They don't have, and they laugh at you. You can't do that, but there you go, more money. And then valley gum plant, very good plant, right? So this plant, this is, I need to tell you this, like, there's your asthma medicine right there. You have a middle of an asthma attack, you can stop it by putting one of these blooming, sappy blooms. They actually have been used as lozenges. Now, in England, this was the most popular plant used for colds, but it was their version. It's very similar, but we have our own California. Like I said, ours is super bad. It's got so much more than most of the other plants. So, I mean, wow, but it's limited. We're not cherishing. We don't look up to the gum plant in a lot of our parks and go, oh my gosh, that is like one of my favorite medicines because I should put it in my pocket because I could save someone's life for the asthma attack, or I can save these in my freezer and keep it going. And when I'm really sick, I can make a tea out of it. And it is, wow. So always know your valley gum plants going around here. It's a place-based science. Remember?
It's also the active ingredient. Gum plant is also active ingredient in vapor rub. So those of us who come from cultures where vapor rub fixes everything, and your mom just uses Vicks for everything, like there's a reason for that because the gum plant is so good.
Yeah, and you'll get it too if you introduce yourself to this plant. If you've not met it, go find it. Spend some time, taste. It's not poisonous. Read up on it. Do all the things that you need to do to feel comfortable and safe. Next one is elderberry. Now, this one got a lot of attention in the last 2 years because of the tincture that's made from this that's antiviral. And what was that big virus that we were talking about? Colonialism? Oh, no. Oh,
COVID.
COVID. Sorry, the other C one. That one, that was, probably the most like fast time I've ever seen like a plant like show up on Facebook and everyone's talking about where do you get this out, people didn't know what to call it or where to get it. So elderberry is growing all around your backyard here, and people around the world and the nation were looking for this. And here we are in Chico, just walking by it in the park, letting our dog just pee off the leash. And they didn't realize all this medicine was right around them that the world was needing. And this is an antiviral. So you have to be careful. It does have some poison in the green stems. So you're just going to use the purple part. So you want to read up on that. You want to study. You want to know what you're doing. You don't just want to grab some elderberry, make a tincture, and then kill somebody, because it does have some poison in it. And I think it's arsenic, or strychnine, arsenic. And, a little scooch of arsenic never hurt nobody, But to say, but it will. And so just be careful when you're working with elderberry. Read up on it, know it, but it's very useful. I'm going to use yarrow right here as the other one at the end. And, recently we had a plant walk and we were talking about yarrow. Yarrow is amazing. What were we reading about? The stomach? Was that
I thought that was gum plant.
That's gum plant.
That's gum plant. Yeah, gum plant has been known to help your body expel stomach tumors. And so
it's a cancer treatment too, the gum plant.
Yeah. So. But yarrow, anyone who's ever herbally treat colds, you all know yarrow is an indispensable part of your medicine cabinet. It's really good for those for stomach issues as well as respiratory issues.
Yeah, it's a 2-for-1. It does both, but yarrow is a really safe tea to make. So we want to go ahead and just find those things. So we've been developing and cultivating that as a medicine at Verbena Fields and showing people where it's at. And then this, of course, is a gatherable place. So it's not like Bidwell where it's like, you need a permit and permission from 15 lords, and angels in order to take this plant. No, you don't. That's not what it is. This is supposed to be, and we're going to try to build it up so that we're going to make it an activity, an event, and a season, a festival. So, we're getting there, but it's been 12 years. This stuff's not easy. Yeah. So we're going to move on to yerba sante. That's a great one. All the kids love that. That's easy. I call that backwards chewing gum because, when you usually put a gum in your mouth, it's real sweet and then it goes nasty. Well, this one starts nasty and then goes sweet. Yes. It's kind of like marriages, hopefully. I don't know. But, I figured, that's people's luck sometimes, starts off bad, but then it goes good. Yeah. And so that's how yerba sante is.
Yeah. But when you put it in your mouth, that nasty taste makes your mouth water a lot. And so it's so good for hydration. You can even go out to Verbena Fields, pick a couple of leaves, put it in your water bottle. The next day, it's a really, really good hydration.
Yeah, especially on these hot days when you have to listen to your body's telling you, something's not right, something's not good. We're not, just can't get enough water. All of those signs and signals, this is your friend, yerba sante. And it's growing all through the park and everywhere. So just one of those friends that, you know, you really want to know around the landscape, and one of those medicines that mean a lot to you when you need it. Milkweed, we have the milkweed.
So it's not just for monarchs?
No, not just for monarchs. Yeah. So, you know, milkweed has some of the most, I would say, interesting skin treatment that I've heard of. Did you read all those?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
And the laxative too.
oh yeah, so a laxative. This is milkweed is it's one thing you want to read about because California milkweed and the word milk, there's a ton of them. So that's why I don't want to speak too much on them, because then I'm going to have to go take you down a wormhole or a caterpillar hole. But this one is just generally, I would say that the milkweed is a great, also has a great skin, helps remove warts and all kinds of different little fun, cool stuff that you would want to have for medicine. And then we also have coffee berry. I'm trying to think about the I know it's a stimulant.
Yeah, I think that's also like a diuretic.
Yeah,
and
got to be easy with that one. I'm not something you want to just, you know, you're like, oh yeah, coffee berry. Be careful. But it does have some medicinal properties, as well as the bark and a lot of the leaves and the flowers. The whole thing is something to just look at and learn about. So I just want you to be aware of, like, learn about the coffee berry. It's not everything can be poisonous at some point on all of these. So I tell people it's not just about medicines and foods to eat. The edible ones, yeah, but just, you know, be careful, you know what you're doing. And then of course, willow bark. We all know where aspirin comes from, right? Aspirin comes from willow bark. Willow bark.
Yep. And also on this hot day, actually, I think it was about 103 when I took that picture. The willow bark, when you peel it, is so cool and refreshing, and it really helps to cool you down on a hot day.
Especially on your point, especially when you're up through here, and when you want to get your head cool, you don't have water, you're not sure about putting in water, go ahead and use your willow bark. But it also works for sprains and all kinds of interesting muscle issues that you have, in like arthritis.
Okay. So now we're talking about climate change. So, you know, we're talking about food security, but we also need to think about food security in the future, right? Because there's going to be a lot of stuff coming down that's going to actually affect our food system as we know it. I know all of us know about almonds and how water hungry they are and how difficult it is to continue to produce these almonds during a drought. It's going to be even more, right? You're also going to have food sheds is going to be affected by fire. You're going to have, you know, a lot of conventional crops are going to be impacted by high temperatures as well. And then the flood here's these two comparative pictures of Lake Oroville. You can see that flooding and drought are disruptions that can be very, very disruptive to conventional food systems that aren't adapted to this ecosystem.
Oh, and let me tell you, California is the #1 economy in the United States, the #3 agricultural economy in the globe. So when it goes bad here, it goes bad for everybody. You understand? So Northern California holds a lot of potential, but also what I mean is potential, you know, problems and potential shortings of things. So when I'm doing this presentation, the whole time in the back of my mind, I'm like, we're going to have to know more than just the agricultural end, even though everyone's, you know, depending on it. They're going to go find another place to build an agricultural empire. And then we're going to be left here to repair what we have. So this information and knowledge is very special, but very, very important for the survival of whoever is listening now, and then all your children and your grandkids.
So, you know, when people talk about climate adaptation and mitigation and stuff today, you know, people think about, oh, FEMA and a lot of big companies, you know, got people talking about the Delta tunnels and replumbing the water system and all of that. And that's a totally different approach from how a TEK, traditional practitioner, is going to look at climate adaptation, right? They're going to look at not just hoarding resources and food and big silos and everything like that. In fact, like the whole mountain is the silo for native foods, right?
Yeah. So this is really, how do you strategically plan for a reset and then do a comeback? It's almost like, I don't know. I can only think about it. It's like a prenup, right? Just in case everything goes bad, it's going to go bad like this, right? Let's just organize it real quick. You know what I mean?
Be
Right?
prepared.
Being prepared for something that we don't want to happen, but if it does happen, let's set it up to fail in this way. So that is the strategic planning I am looking at for this climate change, to adapt, that there is going to be a lot of failures in the system, but the systems that need to survive for our future, our health, our wellness, our spiritual, whatever, then I'm like, okay, then we're going to have to get in tune with this ecosystem economy based on place-based science that's going basically back to the future.
Right. And again, it's going to take all hands on deck, everybody, right? If the whole landscape is going to be our food pantry, our emergency food pantry, we need everybody involved in restoring it so that we can have redundancy and resiliency when it comes to surviving after a disruption.
So the seed program. So I do not think that anybody after watching this presentation will change their life and eat acorns, because I don't, right? I still go to the grocery shop, and like the rest of you, I still have diets and recipes and things going on in my home that don't reflect the ecosystem around me. So I'm not one to point fingers.
Because we're not there yet.
Because we're not there yet.
We don't have a pantry hillside yet. That all got wiped out.
So what's important for us to really do is to really kind of where we're at right now, how could we develop something that would sustain us, maybe even financially at this moment, to give us the little leg in, so that we're not going in the bad direction, but we're going in a good direction, and we're setting up an economy that supports this future outcome. So what I'm saying is the seed program is what we're going to focus on first before we get into, I'm going to change my diet, I'm going to live like this, and this is new medicine, I'm going to use this medicine. We don't have to do that right now. Right now, we just need to focus on understanding the plants, their potential, what they good, get the knowledge, and then let's do a seed program, let's do seed banking, and let's plant them and create these ecosystems while we're learning and understanding and building that relationship together.
Because you do need scale. Like I said, the joke about the hunting and gathering is that nobody's thinking about the preparation and the scale that made the lifestyle actually really work and made it really good, because there was a community development and then it was happening over a large scale. So we need to restore that portion again in order to really get that ultimate food security that we're looking for. So this is how we're doing it.
hey, splitting in three. So what they say, we're going to feed two birds with one acorn.
Yeah.
So
feeding two birds with an acorn.
Yeah. The traditional ecological knowledge program is also a certification program that we're developing. So we're trying it out with Calaveras Healthy Impact Product Solution, which is a Washoe, El Dorado type
based
Calaveras program that basically gives a crew, every time they get a certificate, they get $1 raise. So the certificates are limited. So, you know what I mean? There's like S212, and certain ones you don't get raised for, like a CPR. But they're kind of limited, and then you have time and stuff. I was like, well, what if I start doing certifications in my tribe for TEK, traditional ecological knowledge? So I opened the door to all kinds of new certifications, and they're based on this knowledge that I just taught you there, but also a lot how to tend to the land and do restoration projects. And so Mel is a PhD candidate working on her programs. She's done environmental planning, ecosystems with Berkeley. So we take that knowledge of my 20 years out here and we put it together into class, and it turns out to be, we make a good amount of smarty pants.
Yes, and so our crew, I mean, we have about 15 folks that are employed and working for pay out on doing stewardship contracts. They're doing restoration contracts, and even in like a fuels reduction contract, they know how to do the fuels reduction so that it's good, so that they know which trees to take, which trees to not take, what not to drop a tree on, all of these things. restoration contracts like the East Sand Slough and Red Bluff, where we just restored a mile of riparian habitat along the Sacramento River. There's that knowledge, that skilled labor and the seeds really made for an incredibly successful restoration project. We have about 80 or 90% success rate in our planting, which is kind of unheard of in conventional restoration projects.
And we didn't have a lot of work. So we didn't have one pot. We didn't use anything nursery. We had no irrigation. We went it was super.
All the money went into paying skilled labor so that our crew had a living wage job at $33 an hour to do the work and do the work at the highest quality possible. So the outcomes are good. Yep. And so just the last thing that we want to leave you with for questions is that, you know, a lot of times like TEK, ecological restoration, wildfire risk mitigation, all of these things don't seem tied to food a lot. But now I hope that we've given you this kind of like perspective and set of understandings to understand that using TEK and tribally led ecological restoration, like the Karuk are doing at Klamath, like so many tribes are actually, starting programs. They're getting programs going. This type of ecological restoration is food security. It's also for food sovereignty, and so this is the UN Declaration of Food Sovereignty that really says, okay, for each place, right? People are going to a restored ecosystem for each place means abundant food, medicine, and survival for everybody who lives in that place.
And just in case you missed the very introduction, Pam said the first time she met me, I was at the Peace and Justice Center, which is no longer ago, but talking about GMOs. So what I'm really interested in is getting, and I have learned that, you know, our elders, even back in the 30s under Arrowhead Medicine, have been working on patenting our native plants to the USDA. So when they're patented, they're kept under and protected by the tribe. So you're not going to find Monsanto's or some other company coming in and going, oh, we found a new market of acorns, the new milk, you know, like they do with almonds or almonds and all that. But there's that patent, there's that protection to that cultural resource right there. And that's why it's really important that we gather these seeds, because those seeds are free capital laying around everywhere you go. It's free capital. And so once you start understanding and looking and viewing this landscape as having free capital that you can build on, then you will understand sovereignty.
Absolutely. And so that's why tribal sovereignty is really, really important for a whole number of reasons, not just for wildfires, because that's what's being talked about right now, not just for, social justice. Of course, that is, it's already implied, right? But also for food, also for understanding that all of us are going to be in a situation, probably not too long from now, where we're going to have to relocalize our food sheds and be able to survive on what we have here. And a robust ecosystem is a robust society if we can take that leap and imagine ourselves as part of this ecosystem and switch to a TEK paradigm, because it really helps us all. Yep. And that's it. Thank you. One.
Well, thanks, you guys. So what kinds of questions do folks have? Hey, I saw one up here more that was earlier on. Samuel asked, I live in Yana territory. My understanding is Ishi was the last living Yana. We have a lot of waji growing up here on a third of an acre I live on, as well as some soap plants. I wonder if it's possible to still learn the Yana names of these foods, and how would he go about it?
Well, the Yana territory, I know where you're at. In a lot of those areas that still have a lot of those foods are village areas. So they're still there and they're still growing there because there was a village nearby that was tending or taking care of to that area. Ishi was not the last one. And I hate to say this, but you have to choose your words correctly when you're talking about natives and genocide. So saying there was the last one existed, that was promoted to let everybody know we were gone and dying off. it was a bad thing to say that, and it should not be said anymore. He's not the last one. The ones that survive in all of us who couldn't say their name, they couldn't speak their language, and they couldn't say who they were because no one would believe them anyway, because the last one was dead. Over and over again, we've been writing books about it and putting on the front page as if it's true. It's false. It's not real. So you will find the names if you're looking for that language to say it correctly, but just understand that there's no extra points getting into heaven to doing that. You want to get extra points to go into heaven, have a relationship with the Wahi, meet the Wahi, take care of the Wahi, and be of service to that area, and ask that land what you can do for that land.
We also had a question about, no, I lost it. I'm sorry. About one of the berries.
Manzanita.
Manzanita, thank you.
Oh, so manzanita, there's a lot, like there's berries, there's manzanita tea. There's a lot. I think you people have heard about the teas and the medicines and the, I think they're even kind of similar to toyon, but the flowers are even edible, and then they turn into edible berries, like the
It's
whole.
a good sugar.
Yeah, it's got a sweet sugar part to it, so a lot of it is used in different phases to make almost like a sweetener. So I know that manzanita is.
And the bark as well. The bark actually helped me a lot when I had poison oak, and also I have chronic eczema. So every summer the manzanita gives their bark up, and so
It curls off.
It can curl off, so you can collect it and put it into I boiled it into a thing with a spray bottle, and so every time I get eczema flare up, I can just spray it, and it cools it down, and it helps to lessen the swelling.
Yeah, it suspends the feeling of itching and burning.
It's like an anesthetic.
Yeah, so it has it almost feels like you're putting like cool mint on your owie, but it feels good, like it stops for a second. So that's I think that's the only thing I've had for like super good relief of itchy, oily, nasty poison oak rashes, is to use that manzanita bark spray. It's overall just an awesome plant to have. It's just important for folks just to kind of like pick your friends out there, get to know your friends, and have a relationship with your friends. I might be friends with Susie, and you have friends with Susie, but you know Susie different than I know Susie. That's okay, but we all got to get to know Susie in some way.
Right, and it's also elevation as well. So a lot of the plants that we showed, because a lot of them grow up in fields, it's valley plants, but so like manzanita is a little higher elevation, right?
Yeah, so that's the other thing. It's like some people don't have manzanita available to them, or it's in our parks and all when you're going up to a higher elevation. So people that have access to go to the park and read and learn all that, it's really important to for us to be able to know where they're at and have like little maps. So some of the maps that you see, like I think what was it, the one where you Cowscape, you can look up a plant and they'll show you the location of that plant on a map so that you can go hike or get to that plant. So I think those apps are really important, especially if you're using your phone for hiking and getting around. Those are like really good tools to have.
Do you have the maps or the apps that we can share with people possibly later?
You can find them on iNaturalist, the app, the phone app. CalFlora and Cowscape also have some maps that a lot of them are crowdsourced. So
okay,
And
great.
CalFlora uses and Cowscape, they work in accordance with a lot of the forestry programs, so you're going to get a lot of information on those. iNaturalist is more specialized with like students in colleges, or that collegiate, academia.
Yeah, that ties in with a lot. Alea asked about where you can get waji to grow, so she could look at one of those maps.
And thank you, Rain, for that very good, helpful comment as well. Very important comment is about, like if everybody goes and digs and eats wayu right now, like it's gonna, and doesn't plant it back, like, and that's part of the reciprocity of it, right? Like, and that's again why we're not concentrating on food right now, because there's not enough, right? We have to concentrate on planting and restoring the ecosystem. Once we have a robust ecosystem in which these are cycling through at scale, then a food system can once again emerge from that. But Rain's comment is very important because these are slow growing perennials. You have to dig them at the right time so that the seeds are able to mature and make more, right?
Right. It's important to get knowledge and skill sets in order to gather and how much to gather and whatnot. There's different people. Some people, if you like someone to wag their finger at you and tell you how to do it and be really mean to you, there's someone out there for you. If you want someone to be really sweet, kind, gentle, warm, there's a person out there for you. Find your people that you like to teach and then learn. But it's important. Books are not always that easy to learn from. So when you find activities where people are getting working with gathering wahi, or you see a video of how you gather wahi, go ahead and listen and watch. I think those are great opportunities. But yeah, we know that there's not a lot of knowledge out there. So no wagging the fingers at anyone. It's just really important to get to know this environment and have a great relationship with it, because it is going to save our lives, in the long run. And we will be exiting our bodies and leaving this planet one day. And the relationship we've had with all of these beings around us is going to be far more important than we realize. So we just can't keep it to just a grocery store relationship. We can expand on that.
And again, the best way to learn stuff is to do it. It's to practice it and to practice it in community. So out at Verbena Fields every Friday, we're starting at 9 a.m. now because of the summer. But we have a community work day where anyone can come and learn about these things and learn about and learn from different people and learn different perspectives as well.
And those work days are Fridays, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Fridays now 9 to 12 for our summer hours.
Okay.
And we have been going out and doing small demonstrations of gathering wahi. So we're only doing like 1 or 2, 3 bulbs at a time on Fridays, but giving everybody around to have the collective experience. And then we've all been eating various ones that are large enough to eat, and then the smaller ones go back, and then we show how that works.
Okay, I just put the link to the website there, so you can look there to see what's going on. There are a few people who raised their hands. Thanks for your patience, Luann.
Hi, Ali and Mel. Thank you so much. Definitely, I appreciate you speaking in a sense to TEK and its response to climate change. I was actually writing that down as you changed the slide because I was curious in a sense. Our climate has always been changing, maybe more now than ever because of people. But and then you answered my question in a sense is how do we respond to climate change in a TEK way? Is there anything in a sense that you have to say regarding addressing climate refugees? So access to food, traditionally when other tribes, for whatever reason, ecologically, had to leave or were pushed out, what is a TEK way in a sense to address these, people coming from other areas, things like that?
Yeah. So at this point, there's less than 1% of the population is Machupta in our own territory. Okay. So, and that is because of climate refugees from 180 years ago, coming for various different reasons and political reasons to the United States. Of course, our experience is that some people can be very dangerous and very dangerous for different reasons. One of the dangers that we experienced as tribal community 180 years ago to now was that there was a whole new introduction of food and land management and idealism that took over. So that might be something that we want to pay attention to, not to repeat again, is that we give up something that's far worse than what we have. So that's why the strategy and the seed bank is very practical, but it also it hits you right where you're supposed to be with climate change and saying, when you do have people coming to this area, why don't you give them some good things to do? Why don't you give them some good jobs to have that help everybody out? If you don't have a way to treat folks coming in to this area. What we have a more survivable area than say Fresno and during climate change, you know, and so a lot of people from Fresno are coming up here. Well, that's the thing is that things are going to change here. We're going to have big floods. What we really might need to get accustomed to, like us natives, is a huge population of people dying. That is something that might be part of our reality because of climate change and the events that will take place. So with all of that in mind, I say, let's create workforce development on an infrastructure for seed and for climate change adaptation. I think it would be a great idea if we actually had a climate adaptation center to address this on a more constant basis, and then also allow for climate refugees to actually have a center to go to when they come here. And I think that we could move forward to that. And I imagine a lot of agencies, after a lot of this funding coming to the infrastructure bills, there should be tons of funding to create some type of climate adaptation center to address this and have us ongoing conversations constantly. And that would be important.
Absolutely. I want to answer this question with a story from my own family, from the actual refugee experience of my father. My father is about nine years old when World War II hit the Philippines, which was my homeland, where we're from. And the Japanese came and occupied and, attacked my dad's village, and actually both of my parents, but my mom was just a tiny baby, but my dad was 9 or 10, and they had to live out in the jungle for 2 years. And it was with a lot of different refugee families that were, that they were just, driven out of their homes. And one of the most important stories that he told me about this time in his life was about what he called the old women who lived in the forest. And these people who lived in the forest, they basically had made it their job to plant all of the hillsides and all of the different places with trees and tubers, because trees and tubers can store right where they are. Like tubers, like wahi, can store in the ground, right? It's like that's your refrigerator, is the ground, right? And so that and like these upland tribes, basically they planted everything because they knew people were going to come. They knew a disruption was coming. They knew that people were going to be coming their way. And so he was talking about these fingerling potatoes that these women would plant on the hillside, and he called it makalibre, which means to make free. So that story, and the more that I do this story, the more that story is like right in my mind all the time, because we do have to prepare, not just for ourselves, but places to go for climate refugees. And if I can be an old woman in the forest planting for people, that'll come full circle for me at least. So
And I see that the tribe is looking at coming out there with the youth, and I think we can put some summer programs out there. This is one of the things that I've been able to do and have skills with, is during summer camp programs teaching TEK. And so this is about working with willow and learning about plants and grinding acorns, and kids love all that stuff. They do that. And then we have some grass games where I teach them how to gamble. And we have a good time, and they play sticks and all that stuff. But it's just a good thing for the kids. And I'd like to not only work with the tribe, but I do some, I think it's really good to do a combination. So I work with PD. So PD all year round, every week brings their students out every Friday. Right now we're in a summer break, but their special needs class comes out, and I'm one of their classes. And so I'm there to teach them workforce development, so they have job skills when they get out. So it's really important that these places are here, but now you see how, it really helps even folks getting over COVID that need to get outside and want to have more information on how to be outside and to be busy outside and doing something good instead of like really blow busy.
Yeah. Poyam, thanks for your patience.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Ali and Mel, that was a great presentation. Thank you for sharing all that great knowledge. I was a little bit late. Sorry, I missed beginning, but I'm really glad I tuned in. Hi, Ali. It's good to see you again, Mel. I've never met you. I have a question, which is, you mentioned these restoration projects and the certification workforce development program, and the success rate is because you're using these skilled workers. They're skilled because they went through the certification program. Am I right about that?
Yes, and it is the beginning. So it's hard to transfer 20 years of my skills into someone's certification within a certain amount of months. So we planned out 6 months of training. So they were trained, and we had 6 months of training at all these different local sites, all these certain areas. So it was it was our first ball game. And we that was it. You know, it's tough to do these things, to build what you have to take some shots and try things. And so the certification was about how to plan, like how to look at a riparian for restoration when we're building understory, middle story, and overstory, and what types of trees that we're planting at certain angles and certain averages. If they get big, they're going to go 8 feet a year. So we're putting all of that, so they have a certification on the planning process that we trained them to plan for 2 weeks. So they got one certification for 2 weeks of like almost like outside indoor and outdoor indoor training on just how to plan a restoration just in the right period. And then we moved on to say, okay, now you got a certification on invasive invasive plants, and then you have a certification on knowing these keystone species. So they've got enough certifications that cover them about 25 keystone species, but only about 7 invasives, because this takes time to get out there and pull them and learn them and feel like, okay, you know what Scotch broom is now. Here's your certification. You know, there's this fuzzy line. You know, like it's not that hard, but yet it's not that easy. Yeah.
Another thing that really factored into the success rate was that we did not use a nursery. So a lot of restoration projects will use nursery plants, for-profit nursery plants, that, you know, they're sort of brought up in this laboratory setting, and then they bring them out to a real world context that's drought stricken and all of that. They're like, so you know, the approach that we did was it took the DNA that was already there. So if there's willow growing there, in a drought that was born in a drought, we know it's going to survive in a drought. And so that's part of the training too, is training the crew. And part of the way that we use that budget, instead of spending all of that on a for-profit nursery, we use it to train the workers to gather and to know what to gather and know how to select, right, what they think would be the most successful based on the area that they're in. And so all of these factors, you know, come into a success rate, because we're using, you know, we're selecting the DNA, we're understanding how to gather and understanding how to plant in a way that will give it the most success.
And our overall objective is biodiversity. That was our objective, not monocrop, not like, okay. And we, you know, we've seen other corporate or other, you know, other agencies that do restoration here and revegetation projects, but they're very colonial, and they use very tractors and augers and to put down willow, just stuff that, you know, sometimes I have to think about, okay, how would I do this without this equipment? How would a native do this? And the reason that's also really good is because we're in climate change. We're trying to reduce our impact of using fuel. So it's just like more manpower, less gasoline, and less, you know, consuming of soil and plastic pots and all this other stuff. And just, it makes sense to do it that way, but it was a challenge, and we did take a chance. We could have miserably failed, and you know, had to go back to the drawing board and think, oh my gosh, what did we do? How do we do this better? But there was some magic involved, I think, and so we have success.
I think it's brilliant. I just think it's a visionary program that you guys have set up, and I'm really glad to hear that you're doing this work. I come from ecosystem restoration field, from the engineering side, and I've seen lots of big machines and lots of earth getting dug up, and sometimes to no success at all. And so I think it's wonderful to see this kind of thing happening. And Ali, you might know what I'm going to say next. So I started the source directory. I'm always trying to chase Ali down to get content into the directory. It's a focus on the Sacramento River watershed, and it's a directory to kind of try to get all the people in the watershed thriving so that we can take care of the place and have the place be thriving. So it's right in line with what Ali and Mel are talking about. And I want to ask another question, and this kind of goes to you, Maria, as well. Is it okay if I put some of the content that I heard here up on the directory with Ali as the author of this content? Would that be okay? And it's okay if you can connect with me offline about that, if need be, if you need to think about it.
I'll put her email in the-
Yeah, we got an email here. Yeah, we developed this under the TEK website. Mostly, it's I asked help for her to type it, and then we develop, and then they're like, well,
Yeah.
can we put a square thingy there with a thing and that says this?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think it's pretty much authored by me with some assistance.
No, it's basically authored.
So
Like,
I could have it authored by you. Ali already has a listing, but I could have a listing for the TEK, your group, and have it authored by the group. And I would invite all of you here on the call. You're living in the watershed. Come and sign up for the directory. You don't have to be an organization. You can just, as long as you're somebody who's dedicated to supporting the thriving and vibrancy and resilience of this place, we want you in there connecting with people who are also wanting that same thing. So you can get there at thesource.directory and come sign up. When you sign up, the free listings, you'll be put on hold until I can see that you're like a real person with an address in the watershed, because I get so much spam. I have to do that. Otherwise, I just get people from all over trying to sell garage doors in Florida. So just don't get freaked out that it's on hold. Still put in your information, and yeah, we want to get everyone connected and all on the same page and spread this information. So these guys here are visionaries. We want to do this everywhere, ideally.
Yeah,
So
you brought up a good point. I mean, we want to make sure that our presenters feel comfortable sharing, and that seems to be our process. So yeah, Poyam, if you can put something in the chat, that would be great.
I'll put my link in the chat.
There was a question about curry leaves, and what you know about those. I guess they're plentiful in Chapman Town.
Curry leaves.
native?
Is it native?
Is it another
I don't know
banyan
that common name yet.
curry leaf tree? Hold on. Oh no, this is the.
If the person
It's not native. So one of the things about Chico
Yeah.
is that Annie Bidwell, she liked her Asian trees. She could have an Asian fetish for trees. I don't know. She brought all these Chinese trees for, which is kind of weird because this is not a tropical area, and so a lot of these Asian species that are here aren't doing. I mean, they do not look like the way that they do in Asia because there's less water. So, I don't know quite about the curry leaf plant. That's more mainland Southeast Asia. I'm from the Philippines. But all this to say is that that's one of the things that, we have to, one of the legacies of colonization and the historical just quirks of this particular area that we contend with is non-native plants. They're not necessarily invasive. There are some that can naturalize, and just like what we like to say, like with plantain and horehound and some of these other plants where it's like, yeah, they're not native, but they're not taking over anything, and they have some kind of use or a food, and so they can stay at the party, right? But then there are other plants like privet, right? Like Scotch broom, like these things that they'll take over a place. And so then that's invasive as a behavior, not a characteristic of a plant, because of the same plant can live in two different places and behave completely differently, right? So so in terms of the curry leaf, I don't really know because that's neither of our cultures. So but yeah, I mean there are a lot in Chapman Town because of that legacy.
Well, let's also look at your history. Why are there Asian trees in this area in Chapman Town? because this is Chinatown. This is what happened. We had a big removal of Chinese and by a group called the Supreme Order of Caucasians, which was a Chico group that had a political, and to remove Chinese. So they were removed. They were successful. The white folks here are pretty powerful. And there's a lot of hurt people, but one of the forensics is in the plants. You see where they lived here and where plants and seeds were put down. And so that's why sometimes I don't always look at taking out invasives and being like, get all the non-natives out of here, and I need all native plants and stuff. Sometimes I'm just curious how they got here, that I learned, and I have a little bit more reverence for the situation based on what happened historically here.
And there is some cross-cultural, like thing about the box elder, right? So the box elder there's a native box elder here, but there is also one in Southeast Asia. And so some of the Hmong populations, they revere the
cottonwood.
Was it cottonwood?
Cottonwood.
So I mean, cottonwood is also, there's types of cottonwoods all over the world. And so, you have different cultures that revere the cottonwood for different reasons. So when they come here, they see something that's familiar to their place.
So cottonwood is a familiar one.
It's one of these things that can actually help with cross-cultural understanding. There are even some invasives that are too. So, like one of my cultural keystone species is bamboo. And then there's all this bamboo all over the place that should be removed. But, that doesn't always have to go to greenways. Because we have many cultures living here, there are cultures that will use that plant, right? And can be part of this cycle as well.
Great. Well, there was one more question from Jessica about concerns about water restrictions. I think you addressed that somewhat in the fact that the plants that are native to this area are drought tolerant. But if you want to talk about that a little bit more and how that can impact food security with water restrictions.
Yeah, we've had to get used to the big ag being super, super greedy over water. And they really have claimed over 110% of the water, which is over 100%. And it's ridiculous, yes. Water restrictions are happening. So the best thing to happen to the state of California is for us to have a huge, huge flood to reset and replumb and undo what got done, which is going to be fairly tragic for a lot of folks. But it will be great for the planet and really great for California. And so I'm down to just hoping for the reset now. I don't know how to say I'm hopeless, but the politics haven't changed so much that you're going to not get greedy. People want that money. People want the money so bad that killing salmon, killing human beings is totally reasonable based on the profits that they're looking at, because it's a commodity. And we're going through a crisis. So all your commodities are going to be very they're going to extort us with them. And so Northern California, we're extorted with the commodity of water, especially Northern California. And they've gotten really greedy and weird. And so, I'm just praying for that reset button.
I mean, I kind of want to turn that question around because, if the watersheds actually worked like they should, then we would have no problem, right? Especially with native ecosystems. But I want to figure out how to turn this question around. Instead of how can we secure water exemptions for native planting and food security, how can we secure water restrictions for big ag? How can we stop the water exemptions for big ag? Because honestly, there's the elephant in the room, right? The elephant in the room is this water that would normally actually be flowing through Lindo Channel, would be flowing through Butte Creek, would be doing all of this, is being taken and diverted. So, when we talk about water restrictions and water exemptions, we think about ourselves as water users on an individual level. But I think really the best thing is to address the elephant in the room, which is ag, big ag.
Anyone else have anything that they wanted an answer to? We really thank you guys for being so open to sharing your knowledge with us with all this information.
Yeah, and I'm glad you have it on YouTube. That way too, if we want to rewatch and kind of learn or see the plants that we had put up. And that's just a sample of them. And so it's just really good to know the concept of where we're laying this out from seed banking and then into production and gathering and, you know, goods for services type economy. But the seed banking to me is really where we really need to focus our food sovereignty on, is our seed banking. And that, you know, like I said, doesn't always mean that you can't have, you know, peas and corns and all that, not seed bank too. That's really important too. So it's just the overall inclusion of native plants and foods and resources and medicine and that seed banking, as well as foods and resources that are not, you know, maybe not traditional, but definitely nutritious and part of our calorie intake. And we can, you know, we mess with it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and in regards to the non-native seeds, you know, we encourage people to save seeds also, because if they've grown one or two seasons here, they're adapted more for our area, instead of, like you guys are saying, you know, the plants grown in a nursery are, you know, in a lab, and then they, you know, it really does make a difference. And the plants change quickly. So, yeah.
And that's part of what human relationships with plants have been all along, is about selecting, understanding the behavior and encouraging good behavior and discouraging bad behavior, you know. I mean, that's the way it's always been. That's being human. That's being human. So.
Well, yeah, like Pam said, we really appreciate your patience. We had talked about maybe doing breakout rooms, but this seemed to be, you know, many of you stayed on for the discussion. So I am going to hopefully I'll look again for the little survey, because we'd love to hear about other ideas. We are hoping also to have in-person gatherings, and you know, that's I like that. I know that sometimes it limits, but it you know, people who can
Oh, you're
attend.
freezing.
So what's that?
You froze for a
Oh,
minute
did I
there.
freeze? I'm sorry. You know, maybe we could, so we'll be in touch with you. I mean, perhaps even a hybrid kind of a thing, which is, you know, is doable. Because I think the networking, I mean, there may be some of you who want to learn about other things, that would be great. And I just, oh, Pam, thanks, Patricia, I just sent it. I just sent me in my chat. I'm not very good. So, as far as future questions, Ali and Mel, you put your email in the chat. We'll also save the relevant parts of the chat and include that when we have when the video is ready to go. So we'll be getting back to you on that.
The other thing I did want to mention, I don't think you did, Maria, unless I missed it, is that we are these talks we'll be having one again in August, and then in October we've already started planning a larger convening / conference around food sovereignty that will be like a 10 to 4 sort of a thing at an event, so that we can talk with people. Part of the food assessment was for us to come together and create a 10-year vision for food security, and then start a 3 to 5 year plan to get it going, you know, along with how we're going to get there, working together. So yeah, just really I'm excited about this, you know, community connections thing. And please remember that Friday mornings at Verbena Fields, you've got the link in there. Keep connected with Ali and Mel, and tend the land, and be happy. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
anything else
Great.
before we go? Anything last words you guys have to say?
My last words is everyone just think about that climate adaptation center. Bring it up at lunch, bring it up with your friends. I think it's a great conversation. And what you think about is what you bring about. So maybe we should be thinking about that.
Hey,
Yeah.
Ali, side note, Mark Steeman is a good person to connect with, because they are working on a project, and I'm totally escaping his name, but they're doing it in Chapman area, food
Oh, the
resiliency.
Southside Community Center.
Thank you.
Or Chico Assistance, something like that.
From my understanding, it has a lot to do with food resiliency, climate change, adapting to kind of exactly what you're referring to.
Okay, I know Mark. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
so chat him up. If I'm surprised he hasn't. Yes, so I encourage you to chat him up.
Yeah, they have a facility now too. So I'm not sure what, you know,
Yeah.
when they're going to
And
be
I'm-
moving in, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think their definition of resiliency might be a little bit different. I think that the mission of that center is to help people make it through the month. So it'll be things like, food distribution and stuff distribution and, which is going to be, I don't know that it's open yet. I think it's called the Southside Community Center. I don't think it's open yet. They're still gathering their funding and their process and all that stuff. But they keep an eye out. They are doing food distributions like the last week of the month or something like that, where they have, I think it's at like where, oh gosh, where Habitats and Habitats is, and there's a coffee place there on Park.
1078 Gallery.
1078 Gallery. I think that's where
1078.
they've been doing it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have a Facebook page. So, and I was involved. I know Mark and I both work here at Chico State, and yeah, it'd be great to have it here. Of course, then when you get into some of the political things that sort of drive me nuts, but perhaps that'd be something that Mark would be open to having. So yeah, and so we will be getting the link to the recording out, and like I said, the key parts of the chat to you. And in the meantime, I think you can reply to Pam's email if you have other questions, and we sure hope to see you in August and meet you in person, especially in October, where we'll, like Pam said, a lot of areas have done food assessments. There's like 18 of them or something in California, and most of them just sit on a virtual shelf somewhere. And we don't want that to happen. We want this to really move ahead so that we have food sovereignty and a system that nourishes all of us in many, many ways. So really appreciate you coming. And I think the traditions we can learn from the original and current occupants of this area are just very, very valuable. So really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. One last thing, Pam and Maria, you're presenting at 9 a.m. on the 14th at the Board of Supervisors, the food assessment, and that's open to the public. If you want to go to Oroville, that is available to you.
Right. Forgot about that. Yeah. 9:30, I think, Patrice.
9:30.
Yeah.
Well, we'll double check and let you know.
I know, right?
Very early on Tuesday morning.
Very early.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you
yes,
all.
we will. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Ally.
Bye.
So I need to run to get my
Oh,
car.
that's right. Yeah.
So sorry. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
okay.
I'll see you in a while. Okay.
All
Bye-bye.
right. All right. Bye-bye.